When we think about the industry as a whole, there's a lot of women who don't want to be, grounds workers, scaffold. There's a lot of businesses where women just shouldn't be that, the target.
I think it's no surprise to anyone, like there is still that element that there isn't enough women in our industry, and it is primarily male dominated.
Both men and women have got strengths, typically different strengths or skill sets, but what strengths do you feel men bring to the table versus women?
What we have is women that are in senior leadership roles that have invested their entire career competing with men.
Well, hello everyone, my name's Kenneth Martin, host of the Hard Hat Talks podcast. Welcome back. I am joined today by two guests, a wee bit unusual for us. We're welcoming back Pamela Cunningham. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you.
Pamela's from Performance and Growth.
Growth and Performance.
I knew I got it round the wrong way, but nearly there. And we've got Laura McGuigan from Women in Property.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem, thank you. Hopefully not a controversial topic this morning, but certainly something that's in the past maybe stirred some feathers. We wanted to try and over the course of the podcast, over the last 20 odd podcasts, we've been lucky enough to have quite a few women on the podcast, which leads me to believe that maybe things are starting to equal out in the industry. And we thought it might be an interesting topic to get, a few of you around the table and have a wee conversation about what your thoughts are in terms of women in property and construction. So with that in mind, maybe you want to explore a wee bit about who you are and how you got into property and what your thoughts are on it just now.
Yeah.
You go first.
Well, I think for me, actually working in construction, it was something that I actually just fell into. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was at school, I was quite artistic and into like more business-based subjects. So for me, I actually left school and studied an international fashion branding degree at Glasgow Caledonian University.
All right.
So it's a million miles from what I do just now. And even though I absolutely love the fashion element, for me, I was always more drawn to the business side of things, and made the decision after a couple of years at uni to drop out, and then fell into more of a sales type of based role, working actually in insurance, selling insurance to businesses, which was great. But for me, I really loved the selling, relationship building aspects. And then after a while there, I ended up working for a smaller contractor. They did steel windows and doors, and that was the first opportunity for me to really experience this world of construction, and it just wasn't planned. And at that time, actually, we had a big client that's actually my employer now, Kier, and an opportunity came up to work for them full time. So I've been at Kier now probably, I would say, for 8 years, and that's been my experience. So working on more of the management side, business development, relationships, and work winning. And I know it's so cringe to say, and all my friends laugh, but I actually do love this industry. I think there's so much opportunity, so much diversity, so many interesting projects, and it's obviously vital to the infrastructure, and there's always things happening, so no day's ever boring. So I can honestly say that I think this is a great industry to work in, so much so that I actually encouraged my friend to get a job as well, and she's now working with us as well. So it's been a bit of a ride to get here, but it's a very interesting journey so far.
Excellent. Pamela?
No, I was kind of to echo what Laura's saying. There's definitely a lot of opportunity, and I was the same. I fell into construction, through home improvement. So I have worked with trades all the way through to project managers and exec level. And, I think it really depends on your sort of outlook. So, for example, I've got a husband at home who's a trade. So I think I've always had a sort of nice all-round perspective of the industry, which is why I do what I do now, sort of supporting SMEs in construction. But, throughout my journey working with some of the biggest construction companies in the UK, it's always been a really positive experience. There are elements, of like, you know, maybe sort of how behaviours are on site that I think could be better, you know. But the reason that, you know, I started my consultancy and why I post so much online is because I want to encourage not just women to come into the industry, but I want to encourage more people to come into the industry. Personally, I don't think it matters what your gender is, especially with us having the skill shortage that we've got. But I do want to make it more inclusive for women. And what I want to do is to show the broad horizon of opportunities that are out there. For example, myself and Laura, you know, we don't have a sort of site role, but we have both had very successful and still having very successful careers. So with office-based roles, but you're still adding so much value to these amazing infrastructure projects. And I think it's important to be able to showcase some of that to younger people, or, you know, people who may be thinking about transitioning from another industry into the construction.
Yeah. Well, I remember going to university let me think, about 30-ish years ago. And that was probably the first time I was exposed to the wider picture, whereby probably about half, I'm going to say that, you know, half of the year, the first year starting architecture at uni was female, you know, and multicultural, you know. So I was born and bred and raised in Shotts, you know, where everyone was white, and multiculturalism was just something that I just wasn't aware of, you know. And that was quite refreshing for me. And I have to say that my opinion of the construction industry is that I personally have always been surrounded by women, typically strong-willed women who are very, very good at their role, their profession, their job, whatever level I met them at. I remember when I started I hadn't qualified actually, but I started one of my first projects, and it was M&E, and the head, I'm going to get the term right, what was it? It was the M&E company, and I forget the her name, but she was like the head contract support, something like that, you know. She was teaching me things about law and contract stuff like that, and didn't get away with anything, you know. And I thought that was a big lesson for me, particularly stepping out into the construction field and being on site, was that at a very early age where there was actually a strong female leading the team. And I'm going to say I don't think, I mean, as things got better, I dare say they have, but I personally don't know that I've seen, what's the word? I've always thought that women were particularly present in my journey, you know. So with that in mind, is it getting better? You know, is there a big change? Do we still have a challenge for women in the industry?
I think it's no surprise to anyone, like there is still that element that there isn't enough women in our industry, and it is primarily male dominated. What I would say though, I think that we've made a lot of positive progress over the past few years through like various different initiatives, like the skills attraction piece. So through Women in Property, which I was chair of just up until March there as well, we are like trying to like really change the stigma around working in construction, and also trying to educate people on the diverse and various careers that you can get working in the built environment. And obviously there is like the manual labour on sites as well, but there's also so many different roles. So through Women in Property, we've been really, really lucky to like work with schools and a team of volunteers where we'll go in and educate pupils at school that there's various roles. You've got quantity surveyors, you've got architects, you've got engineers, you've got people like within our roles, it's like business management, you've got accountants. There's so much so, but I would still say that the females are underrepresented within our industry, and even though progress has been made to make it a more inclusive place to work, there is probably more that we can all collectively do to make it more attractive to people. And as Pamela says, like we are experiencing a massive skill shortage, so it's more important now more than ever to actually like make that change. And even having this conversation today and being able to chat here, it's bringing awareness and maybe just sparking that conversation to attract people that maybe didn't think that the built environment of construction was the place for them to work, that they might consider it. And if we can be part of that journey and raising awareness, sharing our story, it's something that I'm glad to be able to positively contribute to.
Just to go back to the women that you were referencing at the start of your journey, Kenny, I think that's my experience of women in construction so far, and that's what I would really love to see change. You know, what we have is women that are in senior leadership roles that have invested their entire career competing with men. So what my experience has been is that these women then kind of lose their femininity. So when I have worked in construction, there's been a lot of feedback, and it's always positive, to be fair, that, you know, I sort of keep my feminine energy, and it's something that I have always really tried to protect. And it doesn't matter if I'm on a site or if I'm in the office or if I've got a client meeting. You know, I'm always Pamela, and that is very feminine. Whereas what I noticed, and it was the reason that I left corporate construction, to be fair, was that the women who were successful had to lose a lot of that. They had to sacrifice their feminine energy to compete with the men. And I would just love to see a space where women can be in construction and they can be feminine at the same time. And just to caveat that, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be wearing heels and have your hair and makeup done. It's just a lot of those feminine attributes that you're allowed to be empathetic and caring and compassionate and everything else that a woman is. And you know that you don't have to feel that you need to leave that outside, off-site or outside the boardroom to make sure that you're heard when you're in a room full of men. And to be honest, I feel very fortunate because, you know, like I say, a lot of the projects that I've been involved in, they are... I mean, I think about a lot of the project managers and the engineering managers. They really, really helped me through my career. They always gave me a space to be more, you know, forward thinking. And I've always felt supported, and I've never felt shut out of any conversation. But now that I've started the consultancy and I am networking for my own business and I'm meeting other women, I know that experience is so rare. And, you know, Laura and I were talking just before we went live, but both of our experiences are very similar. And the fact that, you know, we have felt sort of included, whereas I know firsthand that there are women primarily and like I say, on-site roles and engineering roles who, you know, have had to really, really fight for their space. And, you know, those women shouldn't be the case. So I can't voice for whether I think that's changed. But, you know, there are a lot of different initiatives, like Laura's suggested, that are making things more inclusive on the surface. But I think when you really get into the day-to-day, you know, are women allowed to be in construction and be feminine at the same time?
Yeah, if I can just add to that a little bit as well, I think that is like so true. And often people say like if a female's very direct, they come across as bossy, but whereas if it was maybe a man given that direction, it would just be the normal. But I think as well, like I listen to a lot of like podcasts on like successful like entrepreneurs that are female, and you can lead with compassion. And I think we all know that diversity of thought, diversity of leadership, and having like all different people around the table with different views, different demographic, it makes more successful teams. So I think companies that, in my opinion, in my view, that are successful are people that do challenge the norm, challenge the stereotype, and lean into people's like differences of thought, differences of experience. But I think we do need to recognise that working out on site and like the manual labour element of it is, there is still probably a lot more work to do. I mean, obviously now, like Kier, they now have like female PPE, which I know sounds like a trivial minor thing, but that means so much to a lot of people actually being able to order like PPE that fits females. And also it's about your like site setup and having that perfect start on site and having things like female toilets that aren't used as a broom cupboard, and having things that it's not just potentially females making the coffees at the start of the meeting or doing the minutes. And I think we've probably, Pamela, and yourself as well, Kenny, got that responsibility to not even call out these behaviours when we see it, but almost call them in. To be like, it shouldn't just be maybe the female to go and get the teas or coffees or take the minutes of the meetings, and we should be leading by example, that we are obviously speaking from like a position of success and good experience, but we also need to help those on the journey to address behaviours that will make the built environment more positive for everyone who maybe hasn't had maybe the best start, if I'm fair to say.
Well, there's a few things in there. I think one of the things that you mentioned about, you know, the kind of stereotypical male leader, and in other podcasts we've kind of touched on this as well. no longer do we live in a society, particularly with the younger generations coming up through, are trying to get into the workforce, any workforce, not just construction. You can't have a male or even a female who's backing orders at them, because they just look at you, what am I here? They're not going to stay in your business. They don't appreciate being talked to like that, and they've got the backbone nowadays to say, well, I'm not sticking around, I'm going somewhere else. And that's whether or not they get a job next week, or they just don't put up with it. So I agree with you. I think that male, female aside, the way we structure and lead teams has to change. That's maybe evolved in some respect because more women are becoming involved in leadership roles in the property and construction industry. But I think that the industries, I know we need to talk about construction, but various sectors have all had to have a rethink about how women and men work together and engage and lead and inspire and nurture some of this younger talent that's coming through. We've certainly been to a few schools and events recently with some younger school children. I think a lot of them are still kind of struggling with construction. I do think that maybe AI and super influencers and all that kind of stuff is maybe that construction's not quite as sexy as it could be for some people. But like what you said, every day is different. That's why I want to become an architect, and I think it was the right choice, because every day I get in the office, I go, I'm doing something different today. That's just construction and design for you. One of the questions, we usually get a question from a guest, and we ask that at the end of the podcast, but I'm going to maybe ask it a wee bit earlier, just in case we cover it anyway, so the question was left by our last guest, Scott Mackay. It went along the lines of both men and women have got strengths, typically different strengths or skill sets, but what strengths do you feel men bring to the table versus women?
I think as well, when we look at men and the strengths that they have in construction, I think they definitely vary throughout their career. So if you think about anyone really who has a trade or who are on site, the skills and the strengths that you have when you then go up to be a contracts manager or estimator or, even a director of your own business and you start working on the business, your strengths have to change and evolve. And I think that's the biggest challenge I see with a lot of the SMEs that I work with, is it's their mindset has to change first. They have to come away from feeling like if you've not done something with your hands that day, that you've not been productive. So I think even taking that into a sort of corporate construction space as well, when you think about some of the men that have had to come through sites when they probably weren't a lot of women there, to be fair, and now they're in an office which was typically women, and now they're finding is that we're actually all combined in site and in office. And I think, when you're part of a project, the strengths that some of the men that I've worked with, they're just very direct in getting the job done. They have got project milestones to meet, and they have that direct approach of this is where we are and this is where we have to get to. Where I find that the women come in is usually something a bit more methodical, and there's usually processes in place. And with me being in procurement, I looked like it was always kind of the function that I was in was always on, like, we were kind of getting in the road, when actually we're just trying to make sure that the processes are being adhered to, so that when we do get to that milestone, we've done it and being compliant. So I think that's, in my experience, where men and women have kind of worked really well together. Yeah.
I think my view is on it, I don't really categorise people by their gender, if I'm going to be honest, to say like men are generally good at this and women are generally good at that. I think everyone's like their own person with their own strengths, and I've took part in like insights, like personality testing quite a lot. So that's essentially where you can be like, you're asked a range of questions, and then they'll basically generate a report and a colour based on your strengths. So for me, it's actually about understanding that and having a bit of emotional intelligence, like to make a highly functioning, successful team. Like, so maybe not having a team of reds who are like the directors, the leaders, the people that just want to get things done, but also having like the yellows who are a bit more empathetic and they really want to bring everyone in the journey, and then the greens and the blue who are more like detail driven but might be a little bit quieter. So for me, I don't think I like categorise people so much so in their roles, because I've seen like really successful female project managers and also equally successful male project managers who are very, very similar. But I think it's about us being quite mature and leadership to understand that not everyone thinks the same. People might not react the same. They might not be as outspoken in meetings, but it's to understand that doesn't diminish their value just because they do things a little bit differently. So speaking about from like a corporate point of view, it's about actually leadership, actually leaning in to understand people and their drivers to get the most out of them. I mean, when you feel happy and fulfilled at work, you're more likely to do a better job and give more to the success of the company.
Yeah, well, I think what we're saying then really is we think I don't mean equilibrium, but certainly in terms of, you know, out with the site, you know, there seems to be a fairly healthy balance now between, you know, the male role, the women role in construction, and the role's not the right word, is it? Just your involvement, you know.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of women who are like, you know, design managers, commercial directors, estimators. So, I mean, yeah, I would definitely say in some of the corporate offices I've been in, I feel like there is balance. But again, I think when we're looking at the industry as a whole, and we're thinking about how do we be more inclusive for women is one question, but then also, you know, how do we encourage more people to join the industry? I think they're both very different. And, you know, something that I've spoke about, you know, openly is, you know, I feel like we're investing a lot of time and money and resource in targeting women when actually, when we think about the industry as a whole, there's a lot of women who don't want to be, you know, grounds workers, scaffold. There's a lot of businesses where women just shouldn't be that, you know, the target. And therefore, you know, I think if we took a step back and thought, how do we just attract more people and despite of their gender?
Yeah.
I think that would be far more productive.
So how do we do it then?
Oh, well, that's the issue with the young generation now.
That's the $1 million question. I mean, like from my point of view, like we did a bit of research and it was like 5 years ago, and it was like about having the balance of like women when they reach a certain level. Because what would happen is like they would either stagnate at this certain role. That might have been due to maternity leave, coming back, having kids, and potentially maybe they didn't feel that they had the support, or they didn't feel that that was achievable because they maybe were working part-time, or they would then reach a certain role and then kind of drop off and leave the business. But like it's about investing in that and like putting support mechanisms around it, from like things like agile working. And what I'd be clear in saying this, because when like I embarked in this journey, it was targeted at women. But like really rightly so, what Pamela said, it shouldn't just all be focused on women. Like there's men out there who've also got like parenting responsibilities, care needs, and also just the world has changed from what it was like 50 years ago as well, when men maybe were the sole provider. Like we were chatting outside before we came in, and it for most people it does need to be like a two-parent household working to have like a comfortable level of life. So for me, I think you do need to do more, and you do need to do more to like support like equal paternity leave. I mean, I feel very lucky. At Kier, like their maternity is really generous, but they've also introduced a paternity leave policy for a major tier 1 contractor. Like the dads now get 8 weeks paternity leave, which is really, really, really positive. And I think that's also an attraction piece to the industry as well, that you can either share the paternity leave and maybe have 8 weeks here, or you can have a week when it suits, or potentially come back part-time. I mean, we're not there yet, and obviously like Sweden does a lot more in that regard to like shared parenting rights, but even these small changes do have a positive impact. But I also think that if we want females to succeed, we need to put the pillars and milestones in place to support them to reach that level, but also not just women, men as well.
No, I get that wholeheartedly. I mean, I'm reflecting the conversations I've had with my wife, who now runs a very successful business, and the feeling was after we had our 2 daughters, Sandra then kind of went into, if you like, part-time employment but running her own business, you know, she kind of juggled through the kids and stuff. As did I, don't get me wrong, I mean, I still drop the kids off at school every morning. That was my whole thing, which I'm just out of, thank goodness, because Olivia's just passed her test, so I don't need to do the school runs or anything else anymore. It's great. Yeah, no, it's that whole thing of, I'm thinking about our journey, myself and Sandra, and it was more along the lines of, at that time, well, it's 19 years ago, society, business wasn't really set up to support Sandra going back into the workforce, so she set up her own business, you know, and that business has flourished ever since, you know. But equally, what you're saying is right, I think, is that how then would a man, you know, who's just had kids, be able to take, you know, a couple of weeks off just to support, or what, you know. I mean, I was running my own business at the time. I was up, running and established. I just couldn't do it, you know. I had clients chaperoning my door saying, "Where's my drawings, Kenneth?" So I got about a week off. And then I'm back to the grind to try and do what I had to do. So, okay, small business, I get that. That's what we got to do. So it's great to know what things have changed and continue to change, and that both men and women are supported in construction. And the more we can do that, the better.
Yeah. I think as well, it's about. I was listening to an audiobook this morning. It's Emma Greed's new book, and I know Pamela's a massive fan as well. And that's just about her journey. And I think like we're probably all guilty of it. It's like if you're a female CEO and you're really, really successful, but you also have a family, people will ask, how do you do it all? Like, how do you do this and manage kids? But men don't get that same questioning either. And it's almost a bit like everyone has the same parenting responsibilities. Females, like, obviously maybe naturally take on more of that role, but I think as society and as like leaders within the built environment, it's about changing that mindset, about changing your vocabulary as well, not to be like, how do you do it all? And maybe your counterpart maybe doesn't get that same scrutiny or questioning.
Yeah, I think, you know, I know from throughout my career, my husband also has his own business, so he's never really been able to sort of come and go. But whenever I've had to invest more time in my career, he's had to pull back. So there's always a trade-off somewhere. There's always somebody having to sacrifice something. But, you know, now that, you know, I'm conscious that Laura and I have gave a bit of an insight into how some of the bigger companies support their staff. But I think, you know, what I would like to do is just add a different perspective of it. And, you know, I know through my time working with the tier ones, I was always feeling, and this is a me thing, it's not anybody else, but I was always feeling like I had to overachieve. That's just how I was at that time. And sometimes can still be that way. And I almost felt like I had to hide that I had the kids, even though, you know, the flexible working, flexible first, but sometimes these things are there. And then the business can say, well, that's what we offer. But then there are other times when, you know, it's there on the surface, but if you start to use it and exercise it, you could be looked down at for that. I mean, I've actually, I don't talk about it much, but I've actually been let go of a really big organisation. And I quote, "You're choosing your children over your operational role." And that was not too long ago. So to be a woman and to hear that, you know, you don't feel, I mean, I'm also still sitting here saying I think things are progressing. But I do think that there is a lot of language that we use at a surface level. You know, I've seen myself running out of office with a laptop in hand, still on a Teams call, running to my car, to then put it onto my phone to drive home, being on the Teams call so I can like pick up the kids from school. And you know, again, that was in a role that was, I feel like the executive team would have understood that, you know, I was exercising, flexible working, but the project team at that time probably wouldn't have. And you know, I've worked with a lot of project teams that travel. They'll come up from down south, a lot of them, to be fair. And I think, you know, I only live half an hour, 40 minutes away. You know, I probably can't really justify saying I can't join that call at 2:00 because I need to go get the kids. So again, that's just me using, you know, my interpretation and I suppose what my perspective was at the time. But that there will be other people who are also in that position. But I also met someone very recently who is, I would, you know, a sort of a female leader, and she was like, yeah, I only work 4 days a week and I don't do that, and her boundaries were so firm. And part of me was, I admired her, but I also thought, I wonder what people think of you. And that's purely because of my experiences. Because like I say, there's one thing to say that these organisations offer flexible working and, all this type of stuff, but how does your project team or your office actually perceive it when you start exercising it? And I think that's going to be dependent on people. That's not an organisation thing, or because the organisation can only do so much.
Yeah,
but that's a people thing.
One thing that we've recently started doing on our projects, and it comes from our agile working toolbox talk, and I think that really came into play after COVID and people's mindset towards working as well, and trying to get productivity on site and trying to also get people to do a 5-day working week. I mean, I know some of our supply chain made the decision even long before COVID that they weren't going to work Fridays, and that they were going to do a 4-day working week for the well-being of their staff, and that was an executive decision that they made. So we introduced an agile working toolbox talk, which has been endorsed by, as Pamela says, the exec team, but it's really getting that down to the project level, which is difficult because sometimes the project might not allow for that, or this project team simply don't want to do that. That's not how they've always worked. But we've introduced an initiative called a one small thing. And essentially what it is it's at the start of the project, and it's a kick-off, and it's essentially everyone has their one small thing. So it could be potentially encouraging someone to go to a gym class at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday, or someone's got caring responsibilities, someone has a school pickup, and it's about that team, kind of going back to what I said earlier, understanding everybody's needs, their personal life as well, and working together to respect that, so that maybe you wouldn't feel guilty about going and picking the kids up because your colleague is also leaving early to attend, I don't know, a tennis session as well. And I think we are under this illusion that you need to give 150% all the time to work, but you can't give 150% to everything. There's always a compromise. So a lot of it, I think the framework in the toolbox is in play. I think it's about the behaviours and how people perceive that, and having really positive leadership and people that understand the benefits. When staff feel supported, welcome, and their well-being and their mental health is good, that you'll get more out of this team, rather than people feeling maybe ashamed to execute the flexible working policy.
And I do think there's such a contrast though between, again, being in office and then knowing that, so for example, I worked on a lot of projects in the north of Scotland, so it's remote, it's really difficult to get resource there, hence why there's a lot of people travelling. But, one of the last projects I worked on, we were having to bring operatives up from down south, and they were going to be on the project for 3 weeks before they could get home. So it was you were 3 weeks on and then 3 days off or something, and then back again. And, again, I think there's probably more to be done to try and make it less of a contrast, because I feel again, although we all offer flexible working, you don't to the people on site, because they've got a project to get done. And again, that is just the reality of it. And I think, again, we're making progress, and I think, that one small thing sounds really good. And I think that's something that a lot of other businesses can take and implement. But, I work with some SMEs now, and again, even trying to encourage some of them to do a 4-day working week, or to be more mindful of their operatives and how, what do they need to be happier at work. And the mindset is, well, we just need to get the job done. And I think, again, not only we pass it down from management, exec, down to project teams, we're then pass it down to subcontractors, or at least we're making an effort to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a whole shift, I think, in employment and encouraging flexible working. And I think that can work for both male and female, I think I'm trying to think of some of the team that are in office just now, but, a lot of the guys, we're predominantly guys, which is only the result of whoever the CV comes in. I'd love to get more women in office. I think it'd be a great thing. But, they've got young kids. Their wives have kind of got flexible working patterns, so, they can pick up the kids at school or drop off. And equally, they've got grandparents and stuff. And we've all kind of relied on, that type of relationship over the years. But we're certainly encouraging, you know, if you need to nip away a few days a week or something to pick the kids up, or you've an emergency drop off, or you know, the wife's got some other appointment, she's got to go. I get it, you know, because I've been through it with Sandra, you know. You've got to, you know, I guess one of the reasons why I became a business owner and why Sandra became a business owner is because we wanted to build that flexibility in for ourselves, because at the time that wasn't supported in the marketplace. But certainly now, you know, we can see it's much more flexible, as employers we try and, you know, embody that flexibility into our workforce as well. I mean, Sandra, for example, her team, who's actually predominantly women, Sandra's got a service accommodation business, they leave at 2:00, you know, so that they can get back for childcare pickup and they get that flexibility built into their working day as well. So, yeah, I think it's important that as a society we've got those flexible working patterns for both male and female employees. I'm curious though, the thing that we kind of, I'm not going to say we've avoided, but the thing we've certainly not dipped further into is on-site works. Why do we think we're not getting as many female operatives on site?
Well, through the Skilled Trades Network, which is a networking group that I host in South Lanarkshire College, I kind of make a point of trying to give some stats to the members. Because again, a lot of these businesses are on site. They're not reading resources. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show some of these, hopefully that will soon be employers of apprentices. You know, this is what the industry thinks of you and your job. You know, or this is what young people think of the industry. And some of the stats that I think it was the CIOB that published it the last couple of weeks. And it was, you know, a lot of, and I don't know the exact numbers now, but a lot of young people think that construction is a dangerous place. Now, fair enough, you know, you're looking at a construction site and you're thinking that it's dangerous, but I mean, how much emphasis is there on health and safety? You know, it is the number one priority of all UK construction businesses. However, what that said to me was that our young people only see on site, because my job wasn't dangerous, your job isn't dangerous, unless you do a site visit, to which by you're chaperoned and everything else. So, you know, there's that, but then also they actually think that it's a low paying industry, which blows my mind.
Crazy.
It really is crazy because of all the opportunity out there, of the projects. Yeah, I mean, everything is a progress. It's like any career. But even that now, what the apprentices get paid is far more than what they were getting paid a couple of years ago. Yeah. Which is the issues with why a lot of small businesses can't afford to employ them. So even those two factors of, you know, why young people aren't coming through to the industry, I think is, you know, that we could probably argue them quite easily.
I mean, I think like historically, like the industry was seen as like male and muddy, and to some degree, like it still is. But I think there's an education piece that needs to be done to show like the site set up and what it's going to be like. And I mean, I've been on construction sites as well, and my boots haven't even got muddy because it's like been modular off-site construction, and it's like a really, really great environment to work in. So I think there needs to be like more of a external communication piece on like career journeys and career pathways. Like, I mean, if you can't see it, you can't be it. We need to highlight the role models and even like educate parents as well to be like that. Potentially, if you come in as like a degree apprentice, we take on a lot of like construction management degree apprenticeships, quantity surveyors as well, and it's like almost about being bold enough to publicise the salaries that people get, the car allowances that they get, and then really where they can be when they're qualified, maybe compared to like if they went down like a traditional degree route and maybe being an accountant and lawyer, like their starting salaries when they graduate slightly might be higher within construction. I mean, I've been to a lot of schools, and one of the first questions the kids ask is, how much do you get paid and what kind of car do you drive? And I think as society we do shy away from speaking about finances and speaking about success, but it's almost about like potentially like the CIOB or RICS going and doing potentially like a marketing campaign to highlight how successful of a career you can build working in this industry. But it's a difficult one for someone to almost take that first step to do it.
I think a lot of the construction companies, though, could do better at showing that. I mean, my experience of, working with tier ones is that they only show so much. It's a reputational thing, and it's comms and everything else that's all encapsulated in that. But I mean, I was championed in one of my previous roles for posting on LinkedIn. I did lots of videos, and then one guy on site came back to me and he was like, don't ever post anything without my approval, the site's too muddy. And I honestly could not believe it. Like, I was shook. I thought, your site is a site, like, it's supposed to be muddy. Don't understand that. And that itself tells you like how much pressure they're under with their client to make sure that everything is, from a health and safety perspective, I understand that you wouldn't want to be, getting like tripping yourself up. But for the site being too muddy, I thought, surely this is the point of showing what it should really like. So it's even just little things like that I think, from a tier one perspective, if they are wanting to be, leading and engaging more people into the industry, it's things like showing what being on site is really like, and that sometimes is just being in a modular unit.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think there's also a divide between the tier one or those bigger construction companies and your, dare I say, a small SMEs to your very small contractors. I mean, I'm thinking of some of the projects we've done over the last 2 or 3 years, and I'd put my hand on heart say that they're not huge projects, and the sites are not set up the way you're talking about. I mean, heaven forbid, you mentioned earlier that health and safety is a priority, but for some small contracting companies, it's just not. It still isn't, and they're running away to local cafes for toilets and all that kind of stuff, and you think, well, how would you potentially or possibly, function if you were a young woman coming on the site, And all of that said as well, there's probably not too many young male workers on site that I can think of for somebody. There's maybe one or two I've got pictures in my faces. So, I think the whole thing of trying to get the kind of school leaver stroke younger generation actually onto the site is probably the difficult thing. There's certainly a lot of uptake, I think, in college courses, both male and female. Youngsters leaving school coming in are looking to get into industry, but then there's that kind of transition. I think there's something missing. I don't know what it is, but there's something missing when it comes to actually physically seeing these kids on site.
The retention piece is really difficult as well, and it's like you can do like a lot of investment like with schools, with unis, and actually get people through, but it's about retaining them actually within the industry as well, which is the challenge. And obviously we've got an ageing workforce as well. We've got a massive skill shortage. It's about the retention piece and really just trying to keep them engaged and keep them wanting to work in this industry. And I'm not saying that I've got the answers to this, because I don't. But it is difficult. Like, there sometimes can be a bit of a drop off when people maybe reach a certain level, or they'll switch careers, and then you've invested in these skills as well. But it would be naive of us to say like that we can't sit here. Like, it is a challenging industry to work in. There's a lot of pressure on time, there's a lot of pressure on budget, there's a lot of pressure on investment just across the UK in general. So sometimes companies are just looking, and like maybe smaller companies are just looking to get the job done to essentially like meet their milestones and get paid. It is a really challenging one to try and tackle.
I think it is challenging, but I know this podcast here to talk about construction, but loads and loads of professions and industries right now are finding it challenging. Recruitment, male, female, whatever. They're just really struggling to keep things going. And what you mentioned earlier about salaries of professionals, professional salaries right now are particularly low. Compared to, for example, some of your trades guys on site. I know some joiners and stuff that are walking away, £1,000 clear in their hand, every single week. You're not finding architects or solicitors, walking away with that kind of level of payment, which would traditionally, you want to leave school and go become a lawyer, or maybe not an architect, but maybe you want to go become something in the professions. But I think that that's turning a bit of a myth nowadays. 40, 45, £50,000 is a good salary, but it's not enough. And in today's, we're going to say, what is it, cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of younger people through those like graduate schemes and earn and learn opportunities, and I think that's great. I would much prefer my children go through those processes than go straight to uni and then try and find a job in 5 years' time, 4 years' time. But the issue then is that you've got young people who are like on like 40k salaries and they've not stepped foot on site, which just becomes a competence issue further down the line. So I think, what we do need to find is some sort of balance between bringing people through, but bringing the right people through and investing in the right people. And I think everything in construction and property just now just costs so much, whether it be salaries or materials or professional fees and compliance and health and safety and everything. It just all costs a lot of money. So I can actually understand, although I don't agree with it, I understand why some businesses would rather just avoid it. And some of the feedback that I get from SMEs that I work with just now is, I don't need to have an accreditation to get the work that I get, so why would I? And because they're clearing enough through their own sort of clients and commercial that they're obviously like subcontracting or lower, so they don't really need to prove their competence. So they're just like, I get the work anyway and I don't really need it. And again, that kind of goes back to what you're saying about some of the businesses that you've witnessed or some of the sites that you've been on. Whereas, when it comes to then trying to invest in young people, if you're not going to pay, a couple of £1,000 a year for an accreditation, you're not going to pay for an apprentice. You're probably just going to get a young person as a labourer just for the sake of labour. So there's definitely, there's a difference in behaviours from the tier ones right down to our subcontractors, absolutely. But I think everybody is just a bit in survival mode just now, trying to just get through, and everybody wants to grow. There's definitely much more entrepreneurial mindset in trades and construction just now, but it's really hard. It's really challenging.
Right, yeah. Well, it's interesting. Well, we're recording this just before the May the 7th election results, so we'll see. I'm always a great believer that things start to take a wee bit of hiatus before an election. You start to see people waiting off for the results. Whether it necessarily changes what we're going to do in the first place, I don't really know. But you start to see that wee hiatus, and then during the month of May, we'll probably see local authorities pushing buttons and doing things that you think, well, you were going to do the same decision last month, but there you go. That's fair enough. Okay. So, anything else we want to kind of touch on then in terms of the kind of female workforce that we've not maybe mentioned?
One thing I'd quite like to chat about and get your perspective on it, Pamela, and yours, Kenny, is the idea of male allies in the property and construction industry. So obviously being chair of Women in Property, we've done some amazing stuff. It's been such a highlight in my career, honestly. I gave it over to Danielle.
Sorry, Laura, do you want to maybe explain for the listeners?
Definitely. So Women in Property is essentially a not-for-profit limited company who were set up in most all the major cities across the UK. So it's essentially like a networking CPD sort of group that helps women working in construction property make connections, build their career, and really just offer that element of support because they were pretty underrepresented. So they've been in business for, well over 30 years now, and in Scotland we're delighted that we've got now over 300 members, which is great. So that's run by a committee in Central Scotland of about 22 volunteers, and then we've got North as well, where we've also got volunteers working for Women in Property. And I think maybe historically it was all about women and women coming together and how can we do all of this and power in numbers type thing. But I'd say there's been a really, really positive mindset shift change, and we're almost we need men on this journey with us, and we need male allyship. There's no point in us waiting around for equity to happen or to be given fair chances. It's just about taking positive action. So Danielle, who's chair this year, her theme is male allies, and it's about bringing males into this conversation, learning from them, leaning into them, and also using their voice as well to help represent women and give them a fair and more equitable chance. So it'd be good just to get maybe your view on like who's been like your like massive male ally supporter as well, and maybe as a male it'd be good to understand what your thoughts are and the role that you might play.
I have, when I look back in my career in construction, I have had, and I touched on it earlier, I have had plenty of male allies. It's just, you know, they didn't know that that's what they were. It was just natural for them. And I think it's because, like I said, I was always out to try and, you know, overachieve and try and make sure that I was going to get to that next step. So I think naturally when they seen the work that I put in, they also wanted to support. But I would never forget any of those men, because, you know, even, you know, we have that as a, like International Women's Day, and I used to always post about the men in the project, because it was kind of natural. Like every woman would post about, you know, their difficult journey and stuff like that, and I couldn't because I didn't have one. So I would always post and just tag all the men that I work with in the projects, because I wanted them to know that I could see the sort of the support they were giving me day in, day out. And it's not necessarily, you know, it's not nothing, it wasn't any form of mentorship, but it was just giving me the time. So when I asked loads of questions, because I want to understand their role, you know, they were giving me that time and they were explaining things to me, because it wasn't just that I was women, it was just that I'd never done the job that they had done. So I did always feel very much like an equal. But I absolutely have many sort of male allies. And I think even now in business, I actually try and I would love to work more with women in business and construction, but to be honest, I don't find it. I mean, I would need to come along to one of the women in property events. I've never been to one before, but I don't see many other women. You know, I don't have the privilege of networking with a lot of women in the same space as me, and it is something that I've spoke about. You know, starting this business and being in a male-dominated industry. Now, not as a procurement manager, but as, you know, a business owner, I find it really challenging, because I feel like men do business completely different to women, but then I'm also trying to do business with men, and I'm finding it quite difficult to find my place. And I don't ever...
How would you say they do it? What do you mean they do it differently?
Well, when I go to like a, you know, a construction industry event, whatever one it may be, you know, it's like there's a woman in the room. And it is, and I can't deny it, that's how it feels. And there's definitely, you know, the majority of men there, and they all know each other. They've been in the industry for a long time, they all expect to see each other, and then they all know each other. And it's like me personally, so not only am I a different gender, which I don't necessarily think is intentional, in fact I definitely don't think it's intentional, but, you know, I'm also new in business, so then I have to try and make those relationships. So there's definitely barriers there, but I don't know what the solution to that is, because I don't think that anything has been done in like malice. I think it's just, again, men are used to doing business, you know, the way that they have, and there's a lot of things just now, and it's like golfing events. I mean, I'm actually part of a networking group. Appreciate I veered off, sorry Laura. I'm part of a networking group, and, you know, I'm part of two at the moment, and one is like a women's community, and it's great because you can go and you talk about, you know, the challenges of trying to run a business as a woman, but there's nobody there in construction. It's just not, I don't get to do business there, you know, I get to be supported as a business owner, and those are different things. Whereas another networking group that I joined, I was going there to do business, and how they do business is they go hiking. And I'm like, not only do I not want to hike, I actually have a bad back, and I don't want to tell you I've got a bad back, I just don't want to hike. You know, I don't want to be vulnerable in the group, I want to do business.
I think that, like, you, like, coming along to, like, the Women in Property networking events, I think that would be, like, such a eye-opener for you. I mean, we've got, like, people that's from contractors, architects, lawyers, just all different, like, walks of life, and it is, like, a really, really great space to meet people. I mean, for me, like, coming from, like, a smaller contractor into like the tier 1 universe, I absolutely knew nobody, and I need to like give Women in Property like a lot of kudos. Like, they've helped me build my career, build networks, and just build the relationship, which has helped me like succeed and move into different roles, which I'm obviously very proud of. But it's almost about, it's great like having that female network as well, but we can't argue with the figures. Like, the industry is still male dominated, so we need, like, for us men and our ally in our corner as allies to really be shouting the positive message as well. And Danielle, I'm really excited to see what she's going to be doing, because she's doing a bit of a comms and marketing campaign about senior male leaders and their experience and how they think that they can help females maybe like not even just at the start of their career, but maybe mid-career or returning from maternity leave, and how they're going to support them within that. And it's, sorry, I'm kind of going off a bit of tangent as well, but for me, the maternity leave thing and returning to work is an interesting concept for me. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but it's almost about like, how can we as an industry do more to bridge that gap? Like, women have been off for maybe like a year or two, which they've obviously not had that progression maybe that their male counterparts have had. But then it's about understanding that the skills that they've developed being off, and the how they've developed, and how can we as like an industry and society marry that up to really just make the most out of people's abilities.
So I'm trying to flip it, and think, right, who are my female allies? But I'll have a think about it. Before I get to that, you mentioned networking.
Yeah.
So are the events pretty well attended by males as well, or is it a female only event?
So if you're a Women in Property member, we'll have exclusive events for members, so you need to be a female to join. So we'll have like exclusive site visits, which are primarily just by females, but all our other events are open to all genders. I mean, we've even had some dogs and kids on our networks, but the events are so varied. We do site visits, CPDs. So CPDs can be things like learning how to network, presentation skills, managing finances. Also get like a really good partnership with Scottish Property Federation, where they'll give updates on industry policies as well, and as a member you'll get that for free. If you're not a member, you can dial in as well. But the summer drinks and the student awards is where we'll engage with local universities, and students will essentially submit presentations to then be put forward as the National Women in Property Student Award winner, which is amazing for their CVs and opens up their network. But our theme this year is, if you're a female and you're attending, you have to bring a male counterpart to actually have a 50-50 gender balanced event, which is the first one that we've done in Scotland. But it creates conversation, and it just creates such a safe space. And I sympathise with you, Pamela. Like, there's been so many times like I'm the only female in the room, I'm the only female at the table, and I think it can be sometimes intimidating at the start. So it's just about learning how to have these conversations, shared experience, and how you navigate and just lean into it. And I mean, you only get like one you in this life. You need to just be you.
No, the reason why I was asking that was because I reflect on my wife Sandra's pretty strong-willed woman, and is quite happy to go into a room full of men, and I get that not every woman is, but her pet hate was, this is her words, women complaining, about men, but not being prepared or willing to get into a room and actually sit down and network and do business, because there was a fear factor, to the extent that Sandra hates going into a room where it's just all women. It's a different dynamic, according to Sandra. So it's quite good then, I think, that Women in Property is encouraging the kind of 50-50 split, but bring someone along, which is great. That I think in itself will start to break down barriers,
I do think it's very disjointed, and that's what I've found out with networking, is that it's either all women or all men for me. And I don't love both, and like I say, even going into the rooms where it is male dominated, it becomes comfortable because I'm in an industry that I feel safe, but also when you first walk in, you can't really ever get over just that feeling of everybody all knows each other and they're all talking to each other, and you feel just a bit like a new person, but it never goes away. It doesn't matter the more you attend, it never really goes away.
See, I kind of feel that as well, because believe it or not, I'm quite a confident person, but not walking into a room full of strangers. Even male or female. And I would probably think that if I get into a room for networking and I see one or two people who I know, I will tend to manoeuvre towards those people in the hope that they're talking to someone interesting who I can then have a conversation with, And I've always been like that ever since I was young. I remember years and years ago, mum and dad taking us to Butlins when we were on holiday, and me and my sister would typically left at night to go, to the kiddie shows and all that kind of stuff. And my sister Pamela, she would be right up there in the middle of the dance floor, quite gregarious young girl, chatting to everybody, blah blah blah. And I think, I'm just going to go and play the slot machines, because I didn't have that ability to walk into a room cold. Still got it, so I think there is the male-female thing, but I think there's a lot of it about someone's own personal characteristics.
I agree.
A strong male or a strong female walking into a room can command a room, but can also put people off in the room as well. So I get all of that stuff as well.
The events thing is quite interesting, and I think it's about being inclusive for all, and like the golf events or like events that's maybe like targeting one demographic. And I think something that like I've been really, really conscious of, like organising events for like part of like my job, as well as like the thing around alcohol as well. Like people don't drink alcohol as much, so it's about trying to have inclusive events that historically maybe would have been like a wine tasting sort of event as well, but really trying to do something now that promotes well-being, that doesn't maybe encourage people to drink when that's maybe not their choice as well. So there's so many things that we're trying to do better and trying to consider and be conscientious. It's difficult to strike a balance when, as we say, everyone is always just busy and under pressures from various different sources.
Because you will have people that would rather not drink, and they won't go to a works event because it is drink, and then you'll have other people though that are just that's what they liked. They like to work really hard all year, then they like to go and have a good Christmas night out, and then they get a bit bothered and that gets taken away from them. It's really difficult to please everybody.
It's the balance that you try and have.
It's hard. Another thing I would say is that, I've organised a few golf days. There's not a lot of, there are of course women golfers out there. There's not a lot of women golfers out there, so it's hard to actually attract them into the event. But also men are notorious for calling off, so the next, I can't make it, I've got an important meeting or a business call or something, you go, all right, I need to organise another team of 4 guys or women, and it just right, here we go again. And it is an interesting one because we've got a lot of strong female clients in our business as well, and over the years we've had some really strong female employees, and you think, what do you want to do? And what will we do? The ideas don't really, and I don't mean just for a women event. I mean a mixed event. What can we do? And invariably it does come down to let's go for a meal. Drink or not drink or whatever. So it's not really what the ideal scenario, but it's a hard one.
And I do like that about the Skilled Trades Network, and that's purposely why both Ross and I are sort of the co-hosts of it, to try and create a balance. And I think by me being there, not only am I bringing the sort of construction element to it, and the sort of work winning side for small businesses, but also Ross is there to attract the trades. But there is a lot of we've maybe had about 7 or 8 meetings now, and there will be people that reach out to me and they'll be like, do women go, or are you there? And I'm like, I'm there. And I think it's easier for more women to come along, and it's not, they just kind of like to show up and just to see what it's about because they see that I'm the face of it and I'm there.
It's that role model piece, and I think like people do need to put themselves out there more and share their stories and speak about their experience to encourage the next generation, to encourage the next entrepreneur, the next CEO, the next business owner. Like the role models piece is really, really important, but I would love to see like more female contracts managers, female operations managers, but it does start at the bottom. You need to feed that hopper. We need to get more females coming through, like the construction degree apprenticeships, which over the past 5 years we've had a lot of improvement in the stats, and that's increased, but it won't happen overnight. It's just about the consistent drumbeat, the positive messaging, and really just trying to have a bit of passion and believe in it, that we won't be able to change the world, but if we can change one small portion of it and our contribution, that we've done something positive.
Excellent, absolutely.
Well, I've came along to your event at the East Bride. I don't know, was it the last one? Has there been one since that?
There's been one since.
Is it? All right, I never got an invite to that one.
I'll need to come to it.
So I went along, and it was a great event, and I think it was pretty well represented by both genders, to be honest with you. So I did enjoy it, and it was an interesting insight into what's actually happening out there with the trades. So I'd certainly encourage any listeners to get in contact with you and go through that one. We're kind of coming to the end of the podcast. An hour flies by fairly quickly, doesn't it? So I wanted to, Pamela, you've been on the podcast before, so you've left a question for the next guest. So I'll maybe ask Laura. I know you don't know who the next guest is, but if you've got a question, construction industry related, you could leave for the next guest.
Oh, so what's something that you would tell your younger self knowing what you know now?
Oh, right, okay.
That's a good one.
I know who the next guest is. That could be interesting.
I can't wait to listen and hear all about it.
Yeah, that's it. So before we wrap things up, Pamela, do you want to let the viewers and listeners know how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so it's Pamela Cunningham, and then my Instagram is at Growth and Performance Solutions.
Fantastic, Laura.
I'm on LinkedIn as well, so my name is Laura McGuigan and I'm a frequent poster, so I'm sure you'll see me pop up.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, on that note then, I'll just thank everyone for tuning in again and look forward to seeing you in the next podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hard Hat Talks. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. That way, you'll be sure to never miss an episode. If you've got any feedback or a topic you want us to tackle, please drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and keep your hard hat on.